Okay, so this is the story Tanaika, and it's based on a story by Mary Whitebird. Um, Remember that while you're reading this, you are going to think about how you would characterize the narrator. And the narrator is the person that's telling the story. So this is told by in first person narration because she's telling it from her own point of view, using the words I and me and we. So as you read the story, think about what the character says, think about her actions, think about what she thinks, and you'll use those to kind of come up with a characterization of the narrator. As my Tanaika birthday neared, I had bad dreams. I was reaching the age when Ka Indians take part in Tanaika. Well, not all Kas, but my grandfather stuck to the old ways. He was one of the last living Indians who'd fought the U.S. Army. He died in 1953 when he was 81. At age 11, he was wounded at Rose Creek. 11 was a magic word among the Kas. It was the time of Tanaika, the coming of age time. At 11, a boy could prove himself a warrior. A girl took the first steps to womanhood. I don't want to be a warrior, my cousin Roger told me. I'm going to become an accountant. It won't be as bad as you think, Mary, my mother said. Once you've gone through it, you'll never forget it. You'll be proud. I even talked to my teacher, Mrs. Richardson, a white woman. I thought she would side with me. She didn't. All of us have rituals, she said. Don't look down on your roots. Roots? I did not plan to keep living on a reservation, but I've always thought that the Kaw started women's liberation. Some other sub-tribes of the Sioux Nation required men and women to eat separately, but the Kaw men and women ate together. A Kaw woman could refuse a marriage offer. The wisest women often joined in leadership. Also, Good Woman, a superhero, is the star of most Kaw stories, and girls as well as boys go through Tanaika. The ritual tests how well a person can get along alone. My grandfather told us that in the past, children were painted white and sent out alone. They had to stay until the paint wore off, about 18 days. They lived on food they found or caught. They faced enemies, white soldiers and other Indians. In 1947, Roger and I had a little easier. We went to the woods for 5 days. We weren't painted white. We got to wear swimming suits. We did have to find our own food and face the cold. Grandfather taught us how to eat a grasshopper. So I'm already noticing 1947, so I know the setting of this book is in the past. I had my own ideas about food. I borrowed $5 from Mrs. Richardson. I would babysit to pay her back. Roger and I went to the woods together, but we had to stay in separate parts. We couldn't be in touch with each other. I chose to be near the river. I wanted to sleep in a boat, but I didn't find one. I tasted a bitter berry I found. I spit it out and a rabbit ate it. Then I found a place that sold food. I ordered a hamburger and a milkshake. I spent 45 cents of my $5. Again, the setting is 1947, so things are a little bit cheaper. Back then, you could get a hamburger and a milkshake for 45 cents. So $5 meant a lot more back then. It was worth more than it is today. While I was eating, I had a grand idea. I could sleep here. I unlocked a window in the ladies' room and returned that night. The room was warm. I helped myself to milk and pie. I'd leave money for the food. I planned to get out early before the owner returned. "What are you doing here, kid?" It was a man's voice. It was morning. I'd overslept. I was scared. "Hold it, kid. You lost? You must be from the reservation. Your folks must be worried sick about you. Do they have a phone?" Ernie, the owner, asked. "Yes," I answered, "but don't call them." I shook with cold. The man made me hot chocolate. I told him why I was on my own. "I've lived by the reservation all my life. I never heard of this test before. Pretty silly thing to do to a kid," he said. I'd thought that for months, but when he said it, I got angry. It isn't silly. Kaws have done this for hundreds of years. All my family went through this test. It's why the Kaw are great warriors. "Okay, great warrior," he laughed. "You can stay if you want." He tossed me clothes that people had left on boats. "Find something to keep you warm." The sweater was loose, but it felt good. I felt good. And I'd found a new friend. Most important, I was surviving Tanaika. I stayed at Ernie's for 5 days. Mornings, I went to the woods. I watched animals and picked flowers. I'd never felt better. I watched the sunrise on the Missouri. I ate everything I wanted. I paid Ernie all my money for food. "I'll keep this in trust for you, Mary," Ernie said. "Someday you may need $5. I enjoyed every minute with Ernie. He taught me to cook, and I told him Ka stories. But Tanaika was over. As I neared home, I worried. My feet were hardly cut. I hadn't lost a pound. My hair was combed. Why do you guys think she's worried? What is she worried about? What about her appearance has her worried? My grandfather met me wearing his grandfather's beaded deerskin. "Welcome back," he said in Ka. I hugged my parents, then I saw Roger stretched out on the couch. His eyes were red. He'd lost weight. His feet were bloody and sore. Wow, I'm noticing that Mary's appearance is very different from Roger's. He looks like someone who was out in the woods for a week, while Mary hasn't lost any weight. Her feet are totally clean and her hair's combed. "I made it. I'm a warrior," Roger said. My grandfather saw I was clean, well-fed, and healthy. Finally he asked, "What did you eat to keep you so well?" "Hamburgers and milkshakes." "Hamburgers!" my grandfather shouted. "Milkshakes!" Roger said. "You didn't say we had to eat grasshoppers," I said. "Tell us about your Tanaika," my grandfather ordered. I told them the whole story. "That's not what I trained you for," my grandfather said. "Grandfather, I learned that Tanaika is important. I handled it my way. And I learned I had nothing to fear. There's no reason in 1947 to eat grasshoppers. Grandfather, I'll bet you never ate one of those rotten berries." Grandfather laughed out loud. Grandfather never laughed. Never. "Those berries are terrible," Grandfather said. "I found a dead deer on the first day of my Tanaika. The deer kept my belly full." Grandfather stopped laughing. "We should send you out again," he said. Grandfather called to him. "You should have done what your cousin did, but you know more about what is happening to people today than I do. You would have passed the test in any time. You can make do in a world that wasn't made for Indians. I don't think you'll have any trouble getting along." Grandfather wasn't entirely right, but I'll tell that another time. So, were you surprised at all by Grandfather's reaction to her story about what she actually did?